Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be looking at something that's happening in cities all over the world.
Okay.
Empty office buildings are being turned into apartments.
Interesting.
It's not just like a few buildings here and there either.
Right.
We're talking about a global shift
Wow.
driven by the huge changes we've all seen in like how and where we work,
Yeah.
working from home
Exactly.
and all that.
And get this, even iconic buildings,
Uh-huh.
like the Flatiron Building in New York City, are
Wait.
getting in on the action.
Really?
We've got this fascinating article here that dives into this whole trend.
Okay.
Ready to explore it.
Yeah, absolutely. What's really intriguing is that it's not just happening in like one corner of the world.
Right.
This is a truly global phenomenon
Okay.
with hundreds of office buildings being repurposed for this.
So let's get into it then.
Okay.
What's the big picture here?
Well, the article highlights a pretty significant statistic.
In Germany, they're estimating that they could create enough apartments from converted offices to house over 100,000 people.
Wow. That's a massive number.
It is.
It makes you wonder, could this be a real game changer for cities that are struggling with housing shortages?
It certainly has the potential.
Yeah.
Of course, there are a lot of factors at play,
Right.
but the sheer scale of these conversions is definitely worth noting.
Yeah.
Now, shifting our focus to the U.S.,
Okay.
the article points out that the rise of remote and hybrid work has played a big role in this trend.
Right. It seems like those empty office towers we've been seeing are a direct result of that shift in work culture.
Exactly. And the numbers back that up.
Okay.
In the first half of 2024, the average office vacancy rate in the U.S. was 18.1%.
Yeah.
But some cities are being hit even harder.
I bet.
San Francisco has a vacancy rate of 24.8%.
Wow.
And even New York City is at 20.1%.
Wow, those are pretty alarming numbers for a city that thrives on its bustling business districts.
They certainly are. And it's in these very cities that we're seeing some of the most innovative approaches to office conversions.
Uh-huh.
Take New York City's iconic Flatiron Building, for instance.
Oh, yeah, I read about that. They're turning that piece of history into luxury apartments, right?
Yes. It's a fascinating case study. Built in 1902.
Wow.
The Flatiron Building has always been more than just an office building.
Right.
It's a national landmark and a major tourist attraction.
It's such a unique and recognizable building. It really captures the spirit of the city.
It does.
What are the logistics of converting such a historic structure?
Well, according to the article, the building has been vacant since 2019.
Oh, wow.
Now they're transforming it into 60 high-end apartments. And because of the building's unusual shape and layout,
Uh-huh.
those apartments are likely to be quite spacious.
60 apartments in the whole building. It's almost like each resident would get their own slice of a landmark.
Yeah.
But doesn't that raise some questions about affordability? I mean, are these conversions creating more housing options for everyone? Or are they just catering to the wealthy?
That's a crucial question,
Yeah.
and one we'll explore further as we delve deeper into this trend.
Okay.
It's important to remember that the concept of adaptive reuse,
Right.
the idea of giving existing buildings new life, isn't limited to luxury developments.
Okay.
It can apply to a range of housing types and income levels.
That's a good point. I'm curious to see how this plays out across different cities and neighborhoods. It seems like this could have a big impact on the character of a place.
Absolutely. For example, the article highlights that in the U.S., Washington, D.C. and New York City are in a race to lead the country in office conversions in 2025.
Oh, wow.
D.C. is projected to convert enough space for nearly 6,000 apartments, while New York City is aiming for over 5,200.
So it's a close call. What's fueling this competition?
Well, both cities are facing similar pressures.
Okay.
A need for more housing and a surplus of vacant office space. The solutions they're coming up with, though, can be quite different.
Give me an example. What are some of the projects underway in these cities?
In New York City, they're converting J.P. Morgan Chase's former tower on 25 Water Street in Manhattan
I've heard of that one.
into 12,263 apartments.
Hold on, 12,263 apartments. That's a small city.
Yeah, it's huge.
It seems like these conversions could really reshape the landscape of our cities.
They certainly have the potential to, and it's not just happening in major metropolises.
Okay.
Let's bring things a bit closer to home.
Okay.
Remember the Notacon office complex in Copenhagen?
Wait, the one right by the water? What's going on there?
Well, it's being transformed into a mixed-use development, including residential units,
Interesting.
and Copenhagen is considering even more initiatives to convert empty offices into homes, especially in the historic city center.
That's interesting. It seems like every city is grappling with how to adapt to these changing work patterns
Right.
and repurpose these empty spaces. So where do we go from here? What are the bigger implications of this trend?
That's a great question. And it leads us to the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll be exploring the potential benefits and challenges of this trend and what it might mean for housing affordability, neighborhood dynamics, and even the future of work itself.
So we just explored how widespread these office to apartment conversions are, from the bustling streets of New York City to the historic heart of Copenhagen.
Yeah.
It's pretty mind-boggling to think about the scale of this transformation.
It really is. And as you mentioned, it raises a lot of questions about the impact on cities, neighborhoods, and the people who live in them.
Right.
So let's dive into those implications.
Okay, let's start with the potential upsides.
Okay.
What are some of the benefits that come with turning those empty offices into apartments?
Well, one of the most obvious benefits is the increase in housing supply.
Right.
Many cities are struggling to meet housing demands.
Yeah.
And this trend offers a creative solution by repurposing existing structures.
It seems like a more efficient use of space, especially in densely populated urban areas.
Exactly.
Instead of building outwards, we're looking inwards and making the most of what we already have.
And that brings us to another key benefit, sustainability.
Okay.
Adaptive reuse,
Yeah.
which is the term for giving existing buildings a new purpose,
Mm-hmm.
is generally considered a more eco-friendly approach than demolishing and building new structures.
So we're not just adding housing units, we're doing it in a way that's less impactful on the environment.
Right.
That's a win-win.
It is.
What about the effects on neighborhoods themselves?
That's another area where we see potential positives.
Okay.
Imagine a central business district that used to be deserted after work hours.
Yeah, like a ghost town.
By introducing residential spaces,
Uh-huh.
you create a more vibrant and dynamic atmosphere with people living, working, and socializing in the same area.
I can see how that would bring a whole new energy to a neighborhood.
Yeah,
It'd be interesting to see how it impacts local businesses and community life as well.
absolutely. But it's not all sunshine and roses.
Right.
There are some potential challenges we need to address as well.
Right. Like any major change, this one comes with its share of complexities.
It does.
What are some of the concerns that people have raised?
One of the biggest concerns is affordability.
Okay.
While converting offices into apartments can increase housing supply,
Uh-huh.
there's a risk that these new units will primarily cater to higher income earners.
Right.
We need to ensure that these conversions contribute to a more diverse and inclusive housing market,
Yeah.
not exacerbate existing inequalities.
That's a critical point.
It is.
We don't want to create a situation where only a privileged few can afford to live in these repurposed spaces.
Exactly. And it's not just about the price tag.
Okay.
It's about the types of housing being created.
Okay.
Are we seeing a mix of unit sizes and layouts to accommodate different household needs?
Right.
Are there options for families with children, for multi-generational living, for people with disabilities?
Yeah.
These are all factors that need to be considered.
So diversity in housing options is key. We need to ensure that these converted spaces are designed to accommodate the needs of a wide range of residents.
Absolutely. And another potential challenge revolves around neighborhood dynamics.
Okay.
When you bring a significant number of new residents into an area that was predominantly designed for office workers,
Uh-huh.
it can put a strain on existing infrastructure and resources.
Yeah, I can see how that could be an issue. Will there be enough schools, parks, and public transportation to accommodate the influx of residents?
Right.
And what about the overall character of the neighborhood? Could it change in ways that some residents might find undesirable?
Those are all valid concerns. City planners and developers need to engage with local communities and carefully consider the potential long-term impacts of these conversions.
Yeah.
It's crucial to find a balance between revitalization and preservation.
It sounds like open communication and thoughtful planning are key to making these conversions work for everyone involved.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm really curious about how this trend ties into the future of work itself.
That's a fascinating angle. If this shift towards converting offices into apartments continues,
Yeah.
it could signal a fundamental change in how we work.
Interesting.
Companies might be less inclined to invest in large office spaces
Yeah.
if a significant portion of their workforce is working remotely or in hybrid models.
So could this be the end of the traditional 9-to-5 office culture as we know it?
It's certainly a possibility. And it raises a whole set of questions about the future of work.
Like what?
How will companies manage distributed teams?
Right.
What will happen to jobs that can't be done remotely?
Good point.
And how will this impact our sense of community and collaboration?
It's like a domino effect.
Yeah,
One change leads to another, and suddenly we're reimagining not just our physical spaces,
right.
but our whole way of working and living.
Precisely. This isn't just a real estate trend. It's a societal shift
Right.
with far-reaching implications that we're only beginning to understand.
It's a lot to wrap our heads around. So before we move on, do you think we can sum up what we've learned so far about the potential of this trend?
Absolutely. We've seen that converting offices into apartments offers a potential solution to housing shortages and promotes a more sustainable approach to urban development.
Okay.
It can also revitalize neighborhoods
Right.
and foster a more vibrant and diverse urban fabric.
Hmm.
However, we also need to be mindful of the potential challenges,
Yeah.
particularly around affordability, neighborhood impact,
Mm.
and the implications for the future of work.
It's a complex issue with a lot of moving parts.
It is.
But it's definitely a conversation worth having.
For sure.
Now let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
We've been talking about this trend in a global context,
Right.
but I'm curious to hear what our listeners are experiencing in their own communities.
That's a great idea after all these changes are happening everywhere, not just in the headlines.
Exactly.
So let's turn our attention to you, the listener.
We've been exploring this fascinating trend of turning offices into apartments, looking at the global picture and the potential impact on cities and neighborhoods.
We've seen the benefits like increased housing supply and, a more sustainable approach to development, but also the challenges, especially when it comes to affordability and, this strain on existing infrastructure.
But now we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
You're the ones living in these evolving cities, experiencing these changes firsthand.
So take a moment and think about your own city or community.
Yeah.
Are you seeing any office buildings being converted into apartments?
Maybe it's that old office tower downtown that's been sitting empty, or a complex in your neighborhood that's getting a makeover.
What are your thoughts on this trend?
Yeah.
Do you see it as like a positive development?
Yeah. Are you excited about the potential for more housing options and a revitalized neighborhood?
Or are you concerned about the impact on things like affordability traffic or even the character of your community?
This is a chance to connect the global trends we've discussed to your own local context.
Yeah, because these aren't just abstract ideas we're talking about.
Right.
They're shaping the places we live, work, and call home.
Perhaps you've even noticed a shift in your neighborhood demographics or seen new businesses popping up to cater to the influx of residents.
Maybe you've even been part of community discussions about zoning changes or the need for improved public transportation.
Sharing your observations and experiences can help us all gain a deeper understanding of the real-world implications of this trend.
It really can.
So what's happening in your neck of the woods?
Right. Are you witnessing the rise of these residential towers in former office districts?
Has this trend sparked conversations in your community?
We'd love to hear your insights, your concerns, and even your hopes for the future of your city.
Because ultimately, the future of our urban landscapes isn't something that's decided by developers or city planners alone.
It's a collective effort
Right.
that involves all of us. And your voice, your perspective is an essential part of that conversation.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of office to apartment conversions.
We hope this has sparked some new ideas and encouraged you to look at your own city with fresh eyes.
Remember, the best deep dives don't end when the episode is over.
They continue in the questions we ask, the conversations we have,
Right.
and the actions we take to shape the world around us.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.